The first time I saw the janitor, he was on his knees scrubbing coffee stains from the marble floor outside my office. He wore faded blue coveralls, old work boots, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Nobody noticed him. Nobody ever noticed people like him. Except me. I had built my law practice from nothing. At 34, I owned one of the fastest-growing legal firms in Chicago. I handled family disputes, inheritance battles, and corporate fraud cases. People assumed I had everything. They didn't know I had spent years fighting my way out of poverty. Maybe that was why I noticed him. "You're here early," I said as I unlocked my office. He looked up briefly. "Floors don't clean themselves," he replied with a small smile. There was something unusual about him. His voice was educated, calm, confident, not what I expected. "What's your name?" I asked. "Ethan, just Ethan." He hesitated. "Ethan Hayes." I nodded and headed inside. At the time, I had no idea that meeting would change my life forever. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became impossible to ignore. Unlike the other maintenance staff, he never complained. He arrived before sunrise. He left long after everyone else. He helped elderly clients carry boxes. He remembered everyone's names. Even my receptionist adored him. "Chase too nice to be a janitor," Jessica whispered one afternoon. I laughed. "What does that even mean?" "You know exactly what I mean." I did. There was something different about him. One rainy evening, I found Ethan sitting alone in the break room reading a book. Not just any book. A law textbook. I frowned. "You studying for something?" He quickly closed it. "Just interested." Interested enough to read constitutional law. His expression tightened. "I like learning." I should have let it go. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. "Where did you go to college?" He looked away. "A few places." That wasn't an answer. But before I could ask more questions, he stood. "I should finish the East Wing." Then he walked away. A week later, my biggest client arrived at the office. Margaret Kensington's widow, real estate billionaire, owner of half the city's skyline, and currently involved in a brutal inheritance dispute with her late husband's children. The conference room was tense. Margaret sat beside me while her stepsons glared across the table. Then Ethan entered carrying fresh coffee. The moment Margaret saw him, her cup slipped from her hands, coffee spilled everywhere. "Ethan?" she whispered. The room froze. Ethan stood motionless. Margaret's face had gone pale. "No," she said softly. "It can't be." One of the stepsons stood abruptly. "What the hell is he doing here?" I looked between them. "Ethan, do you know these people?" His jaw tightened. "No." Then he turned and walked out. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Margaret refused to explain. The stepsons refused to speak, and Ethan disappeared before I could question him. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, Ethan didn't show up. Nor the day after. By Friday, I was worried. I found his emergency contact file in Human Resources. No family listed. No references. Only a small apartment address. I debated whether going there crossed a line. Then I grabbed my keys anyway. The apartment building sat in one of Chicago's poorest neighborhoods. Peeling paint. Broken mailboxes. Dim hallways. I knocked. No answer. I was about to leave when the door opened slightly. Ethan stood there. He looked exhausted. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "You vanished." "I'm fine." "No. You're not." For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he stepped aside. His apartment. It was tiny. Simple. A mattress on the floor. Second-hand furniture. Stacks of books everywhere. This wasn't temporary. He had been living like this. "Ethan," I said carefully, "who are you?" He laughed bitterly. "That's a dangerous question." "I'm serious." He stared out the window. "My father owns Kensington Global." I blinked. "The Kensington Global." He nodded. So I struggled to process it. The company was worth billions. But Margaret said. Margaret was my stepmother. Then my heart raced. "You mean?" "I'm Richard Kensington's son." I stared at him. The billionaire Richard Kensington. Less. I sat down heavily. None of it made sense. "If you're telling me the truth, why are you working as a janitor?" A pain flashed across his face. "Because my family destroyed itself over money." Then he told me everything. After Richard Kensington remarried Margaret, Ethan became an outsider. Margaret wanted her own sons controlling the empire. When Richard became ill, tensions exploded. Arguments turned into lawsuits. Accusations filled the house. Eventually Ethan walked away. No inheritance, no trust fund, no family. He changed his name, got ordinary jobs, tried building a life that wasn't tied to wealth. "People only saw my last name," he said quietly. "I wanted someone to see me." I looked around the apartment. "You gave up billions." I gave up misery. I didn't know what to say. Before I could respond, someone knocked violently at the door. Ethan froze. He opened it cautiously. Two men in expensive suits stood outside. "Mr. Kensington," one said. "Your father passed away this morning." Everything changed after that. Richard Kensington's funeral became a media circus. Reporters crowded the cemetery. Business executives lined the front rows. Margaret stood dressed in black. Her sons looked like kings preparing for coronation. Then Ethan arrived. Whispers erupted instantly. "He came back. I thought he'd disappeared. Isn't he disinherited?" Margaret's expression hardened. One of the brothers smirked. "You've got some nerve showing up." Ethan ignored him, but something felt wrong. Very wrong. 3 days later, Richard's will was read. The room overflowed with lawyers and family members. Margaret squeezed her son's hands confidently. The attorney adjusted his glasses. "As stated in the final amended will," Margaret smiled. "The majority of Kensington Global Holdings shall remain in trust pending investigation into evidence submitted directly by Richard Kensington." Confusion swept the room. Margaret stood. "What investigation?" The attorney continued. "Furthermore, Ethan Kensington has been designated executor." The room exploded. "What?" Margaret shouted. "That's impossible." One of the sons slammed his fist against the table. "You forged this." Ethan looked equally stunned. The attorney raised another document. Richard Kensington included personal instructions to be delivered only after his death. He handed Ethan a sealed envelope. Hands trembling, Ethan opened it. Inside was a letter. "My son, if you're reading this, then I ran out of time. I know I failed you. I allowed greed and fear to divide our family. I saw things before I died that I couldn't ignore. There are people around you who will do anything for power. Trust carefully. The truth is hidden where your mother used to read to you. Forgive me, Dad." Tears filled Ethan's eyes. I squeezed his shoulder, but Margaret looked terrified, and suddenly I understood. The inheritance wasn't the real story. The truth was, over the following days, Ethan and I searched Richard's old estate. His childhood home remained untouched. Eventually we entered the library. Ethan walked slowly toward an antique bookshelf. "My mother used to read here every night." He reached behind a collection of novels. A hidden compartment clicked open. Inside sat a flash drive. Ethan stared at it. "What if this changes everything?" I swallowed hard. "What if it already has?" Back at my office, we opened the files. Security footage, financial records, voice recordings, evidence. Horrifying evidence. Margaret's sons had manipulated company accounts. Millions diverted secretly. Illegal transactions hidden through shell corporations. But one recording froze my blood. Margaret's voice. "If Ethan inherits anything, we lose everything." Another voice replied. "Then make sure Richard changes the will." The room fell silent. "This isn't just fraud," I whispered. "It's criminal." Ethan closed his eyes. My father knew. The evidence triggered lawsuits, federal investigations, media headlines. Margaret publicly denied everything. Her sons blamed accountants. But the recordings spoke for themselves. Then came the second twist. The hospital contacted Ethan. "There are additional documents your father requested we release." Inside was another letter. "Ethan, there is one more truth. The woman who raised you wasn't your biological mother. I discovered this years later. I protected the secret because I feared losing you. If you choose to search for her, forgive me." My entire body went numb. Ethan stared at the page. What? I could barely breathe. His entire identity had just shifted again. Weeks later, DNA records confirmed it. Richard had unknowingly adopted Ethan after marrying the woman who raised him. Richard had loved Ethan as his own son. Biology had never mattered. Ethan sat in silence for hours. "So I'm not really a Kensington." I grabbed his hand. "You were Richard's son in every way that mattered." The tears filled his eyes. "He chose me. Every single day." For the first time since I'd met him, Ethan broke down completely. Not because of the lost inheritance. Not because of betrayal, but because he finally understood he had been loved. Months later, Margaret and her sons faced criminal charges. The stolen money was recovered. Kensington Global survived. Ethan inherited enough wealth to live comfortably forever. But he shocked everyone again. He sold most of his shares. Established scholarship programs. Funded housing initiatives. Expanded educational opportunities in struggling communities. Reporters asked why. His answer made headlines. Money only matters when it improves someone's life. One evening, months after everything settled, Ethan returned to our office. He carried a small cardboard box. Inside were his old janitor supplies. "I think these belong here," he said. I smiled. "You know you don't work here anymore." "I know." He hesitated. "Would you have noticed me if I hadn't been a janitor?" I laughed softly. "You were impossible not to notice." He looked down. "I spent years hiding from who I was, and now." He smiled. "Now I know who I am. A man shaped by hardship, a son chosen through love. Someone who understood that dignity isn't tied to wealth. We stood together watching employees leave for the evening. People laughing, sharing stories, living ordinary lives. Ethan glanced toward the cleaning cart parked nearby. Funny, isn't it? What is? The most important years of my life were the ones everyone thought were beneath me. I squeezed his hand. Those years showed you who deserved a place beside you. He looked at me. That includes you. The city lights shimmered beyond the windows. For years Ethan had searched for acceptance. He had worn expensive suits. Then janitor uniforms. Neither defined him, because character isn't built by privilege. It's revealed through adversity. And sometimes the people society overlooks are carrying the greatest stories of all. Months later, Ethan funded a mentorship program connecting successful professionals with underprivileged teenagers. At the opening ceremony, he addressed the crowd. I used to believe my value came from my name, he said. Then I believed my value disappeared when I walked away from it. He paused. I was wrong both times. The audience listened carefully. You are not your bank account. You are not your title. You are not the worst thing someone says about you. He smiled gently. You are the choices you make when nobody is watching. As applause filled the room, I realized something extraordinary. The billionaire's son who once cleaned office floors had become the kind of leader money could never create. Because compassion cannot be inherited, integrity cannot be purchased, and love cannot be measured in dollars. As Ethan stepped off the stage, he took my hand and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me before the world remembered my name." I smiled through tears. People worth loving don't need introductions. Sometimes the richest people are the ones who understand loss. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who have rebuilt themselves from nothing. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't wealth at all. It's becoming the person hardship tried to destroy but never could. Because in the end, the world may remember what you owned. But the people whose lives you touched will remember who you chose to be. And as Ethan often said after everything was over, true wealth isn't what you leave behind for yourself. It's the hope you leave behind for others.